Her ex-boyfriend tried to bring her back. The Russian boss stepped in. She belongs here. Naomi had learned to measure danger not by what people said, but by what they didn't say. By the silences that stretched too long across dinner tables. By the way conversations stopped when certain names were mentioned. By the careful choreography of who sat where, who spoke first, who left the room before decisions were made. She had been working at the gallery for 3 months when she first noticed the pattern. Certain clients never haggled. They arrived in black cars with drivers who didn't make small talk. They looked at art the way other people looked at weather reports, checking conditions, assessing climates, reading atmospheres. The gallery owner, Marcus, handled these appointments himself, always. He smiled differently during those meetings. A smile that never quite reached his eyes. Naomi had never planned to work in a place like this. But 6 months ago, her life had required reinvention. Her ex-boyfriend, David, had made sure of that. He'd had a way of making himself essential to every part of her existence until she couldn't tell where her life ended and his control began. Leaving him had meant leaving everything. Her apartment, since he'd convinced her to move into his. Her social circle, since they'd all been his friends first. Even her job, because he'd worked in the same building and she couldn't bear the thought of running into him by the elevators, pretending they were strangers. So she'd rebuilt. New neighborhood. New work. New routines that belonged only to her. The gallery had seemed safe. Quiet. A place where she could disappear into catalogs and inventory lists, where the loudest sound was usually classical music playing low through hidden speakers. She should have known better than to trust quiet. Roman Kiraov came to the gallery on a Thursday afternoon when the light through the windows turned everything amber. Naomi was cataloging a new acquisition in the back office when Marcus knocked, which he never did, and asked if she could bring out the Chagall portfolio. The man standing in the main gallery didn't look at the art. He looked at the space between the art and the walls. At the sight lines from the windows. At the exits. When Naomi approached with the portfolio, his eyes finally landed on her, and she felt the assessment in his gaze like a physical thing. Not sexual. Not threatening. Just absolute. Like he was reading a document and memorizing every word. Miss? His accent wrapped around the word, Russian and smooth. Naomi. She set the portfolio on the viewing table. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? No. He pulled out a chair but didn't sit. Marcus says you studied art history. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. At Columbia. Before, she stopped. Before David. Before everything fell apart. Yes. Before what? She met his eyes. They were gray, like winter mornings. Before I decided galleries were more interesting than academia. The corner of his mouth shifted. Not quite a smile. An acknowledgement of the lie, maybe. Or of her right to keep her privacy. I need someone who understands value, he said. Not just price. Value. For what? I collect things. He finally sat, gestured for her to sit across from him. Carefully. They talked about the Chagall for 20 minutes. Or rather, Naomi talked and he listened with an intensity that made her hyper-aware of every word she chose. He asked questions that revealed a deep knowledge of art, but also something else. He wanted to know about provenance. Authentication. The stories of how pieces moved from one owner to another. The gaps in those stories. When he left, he didn't buy anything. But Marcus looked pale. He's interested in you, Marcus said after the black car pulled away from the curb. For what? Naomi asked, though some part of her already knew. Consulting work. He has a private collection. He needs someone to help him organize it. And if I say no? Marcus's smile was sad. People don't usually say no to Roman Kiraov. Naomi went home that night and did what she always did when faced with a decision that felt too big. She made lists. Pros and cons, risks and benefits. But this time, the columns didn't help because she couldn't quite name what she was afraid of. It wasn't Roman himself, exactly. He'd been polite. Professional, even. But there had been something in that conversation, some current running underneath the surface, that made her feel like she was being offered more than consulting work. Like she was being offered a door into a room she'd never be able to leave. She thought about calling David. He'd always been good at making decisions for her, at telling her what to think. The impulse lasted 3 seconds before she hated herself for it. She didn't call anyone. She sat with the uncertainty until it became familiar. Roman sent a car for her on Monday morning. The driver handed her an envelope with an address and a time. Nothing else. No contract. No job description. Just an invitation that felt like a command. The building was in Tribeca, all exposed brick and iron-framed windows. Old manufacturing space converted into something that looked like it cost more per month than most people made in a year. Roman met her in the ground floor gallery, because of course it was a gallery, walls of museum-quality art that no museum would ever see. "You came," he said. "You didn't really give me a choice." "There's always a choice." He walked past a Rothko that had to be worth 8 figures. "You could have stayed home. Changed your number. Moved to another city. You would have found me. Probably." He stopped in front of a Modigliani. "Does that bother you? Should it?" This time, the smile reached his eyes. "Just barely. Come. I'll show you what I need." The collection was astonishing. Works that should have been in museums. Some that museums had listed as lost. Naomi felt her professional curiosity override her better judgment as she moved from piece to piece, mentally cataloging, authenticating, dating. Roman followed at a distance, watching her instead of the art. "How did you get these?" she asked, standing in front of a small Vermeer that made her throat tight. "Carefully. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you." She turned to face him. "I can't work with stolen art. Nothing here is stolen. Everything is owned. The paths of ownership might be complicated, but they're legal." He moved closer, not quite into her space but near enough that she could smell his cologne, something clean and expensive. "I need you to document those paths. Prove the provenance. Make sure if anyone ever asks questions, the answers are airtight." "Why me?" "Because you're careful. Because you notice details. Because you left a life that was destroying you and built a new one, which means you understand the value of reinvention." He paused. "And because you're not impressed by power. You looked at me like I was just another client." "You are just another client." "No," he said softly. "I'm not." The work consumed her. Every painting required research, documentation, verification. Roman gave her access to records that shouldn't exist, contacts who asked no questions, resources that appeared whenever she needed them. She worked in the Tribeca gallery most days, losing track of time as she traced ownership through decades, sometimes centuries. Roman came and went. Sometimes he'd be gone for days. Other times he'd appear in the gallery at odd hours, sitting in the chair by the window, reading contracts or making phone calls in Russian. His presence became a constant variable, unpredictable but somehow essential to the rhythm of the space. They developed a pattern. She'd work until her eyes blurred. He'd order food to be delivered. They'd eat in the gallery, surrounded by art worth more than small countries, and talk about everything except what he actually did for a living. She learned he'd grown up in Moscow. That his mother had been a pianist. That he'd come to New York at 16 with nothing and built an empire that included real estate, shipping, and God knew what else. He learned she'd wanted to be a painter before she admitted she was better at understanding art than creating it. That her mother still called every Sunday asking when she'd meet someone nice. That she missed her old life less than she'd expected and hated herself a little for that. "Why?" he asked one night, 3 months into the work. They were sitting on the floor because all the chairs were covered with documents. "Why hate yourself for moving forward?" Because it feels like I'm erasing what happened. Like if I'm okay now, it means it wasn't that bad. Or it means you survived something that could have destroyed you. He poured more wine into her glass. Surviving isn't betrayal. Says the man who's built his life on control. You think I'm in control? Aren't you? He looked at her for a long moment. Of most things. Not all. The shift between them happened so gradually that Naomi couldn't point to a single moment when colleague became something else. It was in the way he started bringing her coffee exactly how she liked it without asking. In the way she learned to read his moods by the set of his shoulders. In the way silences between them stopped feeling empty and started feeling full. She knew it was dangerous. Not because of who he was, though that was part of it, but because she'd sworn after David that she'd never again let someone become necessary to her sense of self. And Roman was becoming exactly that. When he was gone, the gallery felt too quiet. When he was there, everything felt sharper, more vibrant, more real. Marcus called her one evening, his voice tight. You need to be careful. Of what? Naomi. You know what Roman is. You know what world he operates in. He's a collector. He's a lot more than that. Marcus exhaled slowly. I'm not saying he's a bad man. I'm saying he's a dangerous man. And you're getting too close. I'm doing a job. You're doing more than a job. I see how you look at him. She hung up before Marcus could say anything else that was true. David showed up on a Tuesday. Naomi was alone in the gallery, photographing a recently authenticated Degas, when the door opened and he walked in like he'd been there 100 times before. Like no time had passed. Like he had the right. Naomi. His smile was the one she used to find charming. Now it looked calculated. Rehearsed. I've been looking for you. Her hands didn't shake. That surprised her. 6 months ago, just seeing him would have unraveled her. Now she felt only a distant kind of irritation. How did you find me? It wasn't easy. You really disappeared. He moved closer, looking around the gallery with apparent appreciation. Nice place. Very you. Though I'm surprised you're doing this instead of something more serious. There it was. The subtle put down. The implication that her choices were somehow less than. She'd forgotten how good he was at that. What do you want, David? To talk. To apologize. He had the decency to look somewhat contrite. I know I messed up. I know I pushed too hard, tried to control too much. But I've been working on myself. Therapy. Real changes. He reached for her hand. She moved it away. I want to try again. We were good together. No, we weren't. Naomi. We were comfortable together. There's a difference. She set down her camera carefully. And even if we were good, I'm not interested in going back. His expression shifted. The charm evaporated, replaced by something harder. Is there someone else? That's not relevant. It is if you threw away 3 years for, what? Some rich guy with a gallery? I looked into this place, Naomi. I know who owns it. Roman Kiraov isn't what you think he is. And you are? I'm someone who actually cares about you. Who wants to build a real life with you. Not, whatever this is. He gestured around the gallery. This isn't you. You're not this person. You don't know who I am. I know you better than anyone. He stepped closer. You're making a mistake. You're going to get hurt. And when you do, I'll be there, but I need you to come back now. Before it's too late. The door opened. Roman stood in the doorway, completely still. His eyes moved from David to Naomi and back again. She watched him assess the situation in seconds, the proximity, the tension, the history that hung in the air like humidity. Am I interrupting? His voice was casual. Too casual. Yes, David said at the same time Naomi said, no. Roman stepped inside and closed the door behind him. You are? David Chen. David hesitated. A friend of Naomi's. He's leaving, Naomi said. We're not done talking, David insisted. Yes, we are. David's jaw tightened. He turned to Roman. Look, I don't know what your deal is with Naomi, but she doesn't belong in this world. She's too good for this. She deserves better. Better like you? Roman asked mildly. Better than whatever you're offering. Roman didn't move, but something in the air changed. The temperature seemed to drop. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and absolutely final. Naomi belongs exactly where she chooses to be. If that's here, then she belongs here. If that's somewhere else, then she belongs there. But you don't get to decide that for her. Not anymore. You don't know her. I know she left you for a reason. I know she built a new life. I know she doesn't want you here. Roman moved then, positioning himself not quite between them but close enough to shift the geometry of the room. She's told you to leave. I suggest you listen. David looked at Naomi, searching her face for something. Doubt, maybe. Regret. He didn't find it. You're making a mistake, he said again. Maybe, Naomi replied. But it's my mistake to make. After David left, the silence in the gallery felt thick. Naomi sat down on the nearest chair, surprised to find her hands shaking now. Adrenaline, delayed. Roman poured water from the bottle on the desk and handed it to her. Old boyfriend? Very ex. He seems to think otherwise. He thinks a lot of things that aren't true. She drank the water, grateful for something to do with her hands. I'm sorry. I didn't expect him to show up here. It's not your fault. Roman sat on the edge of the desk. Do you want me to make sure he doesn't come back? The question was carefully neutral, but Naomi heard the undercurrent. The implication of power. Of resources. Of the kind of intervention that wouldn't involve lawyers or restraining orders. No, she said firmly. I can handle David. I know you can. He was quiet for a moment. But you don't have to. Not alone. I thought you said people don't say no to you. I said they usually don't. You're not usual. He stood, moved to the window. What he said. About you not belonging here. Is that how you feel? I don't know how I feel. That's honest. Is it enough? He turned to look at her. For now. She went home that night and didn't sleep. Instead, she lay in bed thinking about choices and consequences. About how David had made her feel small and uncertain, and how Roman made her feel seen. But also about how David had started the same way, attentive, interested, supportive, before slowly tightening the net of control until she couldn't move without checking with him first. Was Roman different? Or was she just repeating the same pattern with a more expensive backdrop? Her phone buzzed at 2 in the morning. A text from Roman. Just 3 words, you're not trapped. She stared at the message for a long time before typing back, how did you know I was thinking that? Because I know what it looks like when someone is trying to convince themselves they're free. Are you free? The response took longer this time. I don't know. But I'd like to be. The work on the collection finished 2 weeks later. Naomi compiled the final documents, hundreds of pages proving provenance, legitimacy, ownership. Everything was clean. Legal. Defensible. She'd done her job. Roman took the folders and set them aside without looking at them. Thank you. That's it? What else would there be? I don't know. I thought, she stopped. What had she thought? That finishing the work would change something? Clarify something? Nothing. You thought this was a convenient excuse to keep you close. Was it? Partially. He met her eyes. But only partially. I do need someone I can trust with this kind of work. And I do trust you. The question is whether you trust me. I don't know. Also honest. He stood, walked to the Vermeer. There's a story about this painting. The woman in it. Some people think she's looking at someone she loves. Others think she's looking at someone she's afraid of. Vermeer never said which. Maybe both. Is this a metaphor? Everything is a metaphor if you think about it long enough. He touched the frame lightly. I can offer you more work. A permanent position managing the collection. You'd have complete autonomy. Good salary. Resources to acquire pieces for yourself, if you wanted. And what would you get out of it? Someone I trust in a world where trust is expensive. He turned back to her. And time with you. I won't pretend that's not part of it. What if I say no? Then you say no. The money you've earned is yours. The references are yours. You walk away and I don't follow. Your choice. Naomi looked around the gallery. At the art she'd catalogued and documented. At the space that had become familiar. At Roman, standing in the light from the window, waiting for her answer. I need time, she said. Take it. She took 3 days. Spent them walking through the city, sitting in parks, drinking coffee in cafes where no one knew her name. She made more lists. Called her mother and didn't tell her anything important. Went to her old neighborhood and stood outside the building where she and David had lived, trying to remember who she'd been back then. That woman felt like a stranger. On the 3rd day, she went back to the gallery. Roman was there, reading in the chair by the window. He looked up when she entered but didn't speak. I'll take the job, she said. With conditions. Name them. I maintain my own apartment. My own life outside of this. If you and I become something more than professional, it happens because we both choose it, not because I'm financially dependent on you or professionally obligated. She took a breath. And if I ever feel like I'm losing myself again, I walk away. No questions. No consequences. Agreed. Just like that? Just like that. He closed his book. Anything else? Yes. You have to be honest with me. About what you do. About the parts of your life that are dangerous. I don't need to be involved in them, but I need to know they exist. He was quiet for a long moment. That's not a small thing you're asking. I know. People who know too much about my business become complicated. Then I'll be complicated. He smiled. Actually smiled, full and genuine. You already are. They worked together for 6 months before he kissed her. 6 months of late nights and early mornings, of shared meals and comfortable silences. 6 months of learning each other's rhythms and boundaries. Of testing trust. It happened in front of the Rothko, after a particularly difficult authentication that had taken weeks. Naomi was exhausted, her eyes burning from reading centuries-old documents in bad light. Roman brought her coffee and she took it without looking away from the painting. It's real, she said. Definitely real. The provenance is perfect. You sound disappointed. I wanted it to be complicated. Why? Because easy feels suspicious. He laughed, and she turned to look at him, surprised. He almost never laughed. When he did, it transformed his face, made him look younger. Lighter. What? Nothing. Just, you're the only person I know who's disappointed when things go right. That's not true. It is. You expect complications. You prepare for them. When they don't come, you don't know what to do with yourself. And you don't? I do. That's why I recognize it. He took the coffee cup from her hands and set it down. We're the same that way. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. He kissed her then, and it felt like inevitability. Like something that had been building for months finally given permission to exist. She kissed him back, and it was different from kissing David. Different from kissing anyone. There was heat but also patience. Desire but also question. Want but also respect. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Complicated enough for you? Getting there. They didn't hide it, exactly, but they didn't announce it either. It existed in the spaces between professional and personal, in the way his hand would find hers when they were alone, in the way she'd lean against him when she was tired. It was real but also private. Theirs. Marcus noticed, of course. Called her with warnings she didn't listen to. Her mother asked if she was seeing anyone and Naomi said yes without saying who. David called twice more, trying to convince her to meet him. She blocked his number. Roman told her things in pieces. Never the whole story, but enough. Enough to understand that his business involved moving things that needed moving, protecting people who needed protecting, making decisions that had consequences. He didn't glorify it. Didn't justify it. Just stated it as fact. "Does it bother you?" he asked one night, lying beside her in his apartment uptown. "Yes. But not enough to leave?" "Not yet." She turned to face him. "Does that make me complicit?" "We're all complicit in something." His fingers traced patterns on her shoulder. "The question is whether you can live with it." "Can you?" "Most days." "And the other days?" "I try not to think too hard." 3 months after they started, David came back. This time, he didn't come alone. Naomi was leaving the gallery late when she saw them, David and 2 men she didn't recognize. They were standing by her car. Waiting. Her instinct was to turn around, go back inside, call Roman. But something stubborn in her refused. She was tired of being afraid. Tired of letting David have power over her movements. She walked to the car, keys ready. "You need to stop this." "I need to stop." David looked genuinely baffled. "Naomi, I'm trying to help you. Do you know who Roman Kiraov really is? What he's involved in?" "I know enough." "You know he's connected to the Bratva? That people who cross him disappear? That the life he's offering you is built on," he stopped, searching for words. "On things you wouldn't be able to live with if you really understood them. You don't get to decide what I can live with. Someone has to. You're not thinking clearly. He's manipulating you. Making you think you have choices when really. Really what?" She felt anger rising, clean and sharp. "Really I'm too stupid to know my own mind? Really I need you to save me from myself?" "I've heard this before, David. It's the same script. You dress it up in concern, but it's still just control. This is different." "It's not." She unlocked her car. "And I'm done. Stop following me. Stop calling. Stop trying to rescue me from a life you know nothing about." One of the men with David stepped forward. "Maybe you should listen to him." The threat was implicit but clear. Naomi felt her heart rate spike. She looked at David. "Really? You're threatening me now?" "I'm not." David looked panicked. "They're just friends. Concerned friends. Tell your concerned friends to step back." "Or what?" The man smiled. "You'll call your gangster boyfriend?" "See, that's the problem. You think you're safe because you're with him. But what happens when he gets bored? When you become a liability instead of an asset?" A car pulled up. Black, expensive, quiet. Roman got out slowly, and Naomi watched the dynamic shift immediately. The 2 men with David exchanged glances. David went pale. Roman walked over, unhurried. He nodded to Naomi. "You okay?" "Fine." He looked at David, then at the 2 men. His expression was pleasant. Conversational. "Gentlemen. Is there a problem here?" "No problem," one of them said. "Just talking." "Didn't look like talking." Roman's voice stayed friendly. Looked like something else. But maybe I'm misreading the situation. We were leaving, David said quickly. That's good. Because I'd hate for there to be a misunderstanding. Roman moved slightly, positioning himself between Naomi and the men. Misunderstandings can get messy. People can get hurt. Reputations can get damaged. Better to avoid all that. We understand, the second man said. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're harassing someone under my protection. And that's not something I take lightly. The pleasant tone never changed, but something in his posture did. Something that made the air feel heavier. So let me be very clear. Naomi is off limits. Her work is off limits. Her life is off limits. If I hear about anyone at all, making her uncomfortable, there will be consequences. Are we clear? They nodded. Good. Roman turned to David. You wanted her back. I get that. But she's made her choice. Respect it. Move on. Find someone who actually wants what you're offering. After they left, Naomi leaned against her car, adrenaline making her shaky. I could have handled that. I know. Then why did you come? Because you shouldn't have to handle everything alone. He touched her face gently. Being strong doesn't mean never accepting help. Is that what you tell yourself? It's what I'm learning. He pulled her close. From you. That night, in his apartment, she asked the question she'd been avoiding. What would you have done if they hadn't backed down? What needed to be done? That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. He was quiet for a moment. You asked me to be honest. The truth is, I would have protected you. However necessary. Does that scare you? Yes. Enough to leave? She thought about it. Really thought about it. About David and his controlled concern, about Roman and his controlled danger. About the difference between someone who wanted to save her and someone who wanted to stand beside her. No, she said. Not enough to leave. Time passed in the way it does when you're building something real, slowly, then all at once. They settled into a rhythm. Work days spent cataloging and authenticating. Evenings together, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in the same space. Weekends when Roman would disappear for business she didn't ask about and reappear with that look in his eyes that meant things had gone badly but were handled. She learned to read him. To know when he needed silence and when he needed distraction. To understand the weight he carried without trying to take it from him. He learned her too. Learned when to push and when to let her figure things out herself. Learned that her independence wasn't rejection, just self-preservation. They fought sometimes. Not about small things. About the big ones. About boundaries and honesty and what it meant to build a life together when parts of that life existed in shadows. The fights were clean though. No manipulation. No gaslighting. Just two people trying to figure out how to be together without losing themselves. Marcus eventually stopped warning her. Started inviting them both to gallery openings. Her mother met Roman and was charmed despite herself. He's not what I expected, she told Naomi afterward. More thoughtful. More present. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone scarier. He can be scary. So can you, sweetheart. Her mother smiled. Maybe that's why it works. A year after they started, Roman asked her to move in. Not demanded. Not assumed. Asked. You keep half your clothes here anyway, he pointed out. And most of your research materials. And you haven't slept at your apartment in 3 weeks. I like having my own space. I know. Keep it. Sublet it. Use it as an office. Whatever you want. He pulled her closer on the couch. I just want you here. Permanently. If you want that too. What if it doesn't work? Then you leave. Same as we agreed from the beginning. Just like that? Just like that. Though I'd prefer if it did work. She moved in on a Saturday. Didn't bring much because she already had so much there. Roman cleared space in his closet, in his bathroom, in his life. Came home one day with a key to a studio space downtown. What's this? For you. If you want to paint again. Or not. Just a space that's yours in case you need it. She cried, which surprised them both. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. She wiped her eyes. David would never have done something like this. I'm not David. I know. That's why I'm crying. They made it work. It wasn't perfect. Some days were harder than others. Some nights Roman came home with blood on his knuckles he wouldn't explain. Some mornings Naomi woke up anxious about losing herself in this life they were building. But they were honest about it. The imperfections. The doubts. The fear. And slowly, carefully, they built something that felt real. Not a fairy tale. Not a fantasy. Just two people who'd both learned hard lessons about control and freedom, choosing each other every day. David called one more time, 2 years later. Naomi almost didn't answer. When she did, his voice was different. Quieter. Older. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Really sorry. For everything. Okay. Are you happy? She thought about it. About Roman reading in the chair by the window. About her studio downtown where she'd started painting again. About the collection they'd built together, pieces chosen with care and love. About fights and reconciliations and all the messy, complicated, beautiful work of being with someone. Yes, she said. I am. Good. That's good. You deserve that. After she hung up, Roman looked up from his book. Everything okay? Yeah. She sat beside him, let him pull her close. Everything's okay. And it was. Not perfect. Not simple. But okay. Real. Theirs. The kind of okay that mattered. The Vermeer hung in the gallery, the woman in the painting still looking at something beyond the frame. Naomi had spent years studying it. Years wondering what the woman saw. Love or fear. Trust or danger. Maybe, she finally understood, it was both. Maybe that was always how it worked. Maybe the art wasn't in choosing one or the other, but in learning to live with both. To see clearly and choose anyway. Roman's arms tightened around her. What are you thinking? That Vermeer was smarter than we give him credit for. How so? He knew that the best love stories are the complicated ones. Roman kissed the top of her head. Lucky for us. Outside, the city moved and breathed. Inside, they stayed still. Two people who'd found each other in the shadows, who'd chosen to stay despite the complications, despite the fear, despite everything that should have driven them apart. Naomi had learned to measure danger not by what people said, but by what they didn't say. And what Roman didn't say, in all the small silences and careful touches and protected moments, was that he needed her. But she heard it anyway. And she stayed. Hey loves. Thank you for staying with me until the end. For letting Naomi and Roman's story unfold in all its messy, complicated, real glory. I know this wasn't your typical Mafia romance. No shootouts, no dramatic rescues, no explosive confessions. Just two people trying to figure out how to be together without losing themselves. And honestly, that felt more dangerous to write than any action scene. Because the truth is, the hardest battles aren't the obvious ones. They're the quiet fights we have with ourselves about whether we're strong enough to stay, brave enough to leave, or wise enough to know the difference. Naomi's journey hit close to home for me. That feeling of rebuilding after someone made you small. Of learning to trust again without forgetting why you stopped trusting in the first place. Of finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and doesn't try to change what they find. Roman isn't perfect. Naomi isn't perfect. Their relationship isn't perfect. But it's real. And sometimes real is better than perfect. I'd love to know what you felt while listening. Did any moments hit you hard? Did you see yourself in parts of Naomi's struggle? What did you think about her choice to stay? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me your stories. Share what resonated. Because these stories, they're just conversations we're having with each other about love and fear and finding our way through both. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting these characters live in your mind for a while. Until next time, my loves. Take care of yourselves. And remember, you always have a choice. Always.